Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow, and in today's episode, we're going to talk more about fanzines and their importance to early animation. Okay, so again, before we begin, I've got to remind everyone to basically go down below, click like, and click subscribe. And of course, with the new YouTube thing, you also have to click notify, that little bell, so that whenever I put out new videos, then you'll be able to tell. Okay. So let's begin with our topic. So today, when I was going through archives, I managed to come across one of our old fanzines, and this is the fanzine that I used to put out. It's called Prototype. Okay, and this particular issue we featured Orange Road. So basically, I'm going to go through this sort of fanzine and sort of go over why it's so important. Obviously, it's easy enough for some of us to basically go to a Japanese bookstore like Kinyu or a Wasei bookstore and pick up a copy of, let's say, New Type magazine, for example, like this, and then be able to get some information about the Japanese animation and whatnot that's coming out right now. But for a lot of us, we didn't have all that sort of ability, and even if we did, the translation and different topics and that kind of stuff aren't easily covered in these this magazine. So that's why there's this sort of gap where fanzines and English translated anime magazines really were very important to us, because not only they bridge that gap of understanding and that kind of stuff, they basically gave us an outlet to learn and get more information that's more relevant, that was accessible to us, rather than something that seemed so shall we say distant or sort of foreign, as an actual Japanese magazine. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through this, and I'm going to show you some of the production that went behind it, and just so you can just see and you get an idea of what we had to go through in order to get just even little tidbits of information. Okay, so let's begin with the front cover of the fanzine Prototype. Okay, so we'll start with the front cover. This is our magazine Prototype. Okay, you can tell with the font Prototype, it's actually almost the same as the font that New Type magazine uses. That's what we sort of kind of molded it after. And this is for the issue for Kimagure Orange Road. This is made a feature. Now, we printed it once before, so this is sort of like when we reintegrated and made Prototype Generation 4. We decided to make it the second printing for it. And so here we're going to show you the actual the paste up for it. So we didn't use any sort of fancy graphics editor or any sort of layout software to do this. We basically used the standard newspaper scrapbook clip and paste and cut and glue type of method, and then we then took this image to a photocopy machine to actually photocopy what you basically see. Okay, so this is the first page. This is obviously the letter or the editorial note. Okay, and it's kind of interesting. I quickly noticed that they're giving some updates on basically what we're planning to do and what some of the things that we're trying to work on. I make a mention that we're also doing a trip down to the San Diego Comic-Con, doing the sort of a big road trip into California. Okay, let's see how many of you guys can actually name all these characters that are on this line here. Okay, let's see. That would be Amy from Gulf Wars Destruction. That's Lena from Double Zeta. Seiko. That's Sarah Mas from Double Zeta. See, that's Shieldy from Gulf Wars 2. Biko. That's a pretty generic Gulf Wars 2 character. I'm gonna guess Luffy. And then I guess that last one would be Ito in a dress from Double Zeta. Okay, so on the next page we start with the Orange Road character chart. So I guess we're introducing all the various different characters to the Orange Road TV series and manga series. And you can see we basically went through and did a sort of basic rundown of everything for the main characters, Kyosuke, Yukawa, and Ishikaru, and you can see from the images here that they're all literally like a computer printout, and then beside the computer printout we basically took photocopies and little I guess snippets and that kind of stuff, clips, and we just literally taped them together. You can even see the tape over all these 15-20 years has yellowed, and you can see where I've actually taped down all the the different clippings I've put together to make this page. On to page 2 now, and this is the rest of the characters, all the various different other family members and all his friends. Then you can see all the information that's given there. And again, the same way, I've basically took the computer printout and basically just taped images from the mangas and various different things to them, so that you can just see who these people are. Now we go to the manga translation here, and now you notice again it's the same thing. It's a computer text printout, and some odd images of the manga right beside it. But what you'll notice is that the format of the translation is basically, it's as if you had the manga in front of you, and we're going to read you it page by page, numbering the page, and then numbering what the narrator, what the what the various characters are saying, rather than doing a scanlation where you're scanning the manga and then trying to block out the words, because again, a lot of the distribution that we had to do is in textual form, because we weren't transmitting JPEGs from one location to another. So a lot of the stuff we had to basically just sort of say, okay, when you're on page 8, this is what you're going to be reading, and then you sort of match up what you read on the text translation with the pictures and that kind of stuff you see it actually in the manga. So this is sort of like a like a Cole's notes, or a kind of a guide sheet. So you'd look at the translation on your in textual form, and then you'd look in the manga to see which corresponding cell and which corresponding dialogue boxes sort of match up with the translation, and then that way you sort of can follow it and you don't get too far behind. And this is sort of the way how we had to do it, because again, a lot of the information and the data would be transmitted to each other using Usenet or something, which is primarily all text, or on the bulletin board systems, which again is all text. The other nice thing that sort of to think about it is that this form of translation, although very inconvenient, but it really like the stuff at this era, it really promoted people to go out and buy the original manga. Okay, because this is not something that you could really easily, like for example, you can't really download it because no one's really JPEG'd it or scanlated it or anything like that. So you really, if you were interested in Orange Road, or you watched the Orange Road TV series and you really liked it, and you want to see what it was about, now that this translation sort of comes out or gives you some pointed interest to it, you'd really have to download this quick little text file which gives you the translation, but then you'd still have to go to your bookstore like Kinyu and whatnot, and actually order the manga in so that you could follow the translation with the manga, and you could just read them kind of side on side almost, as it were. And so this really was nice because, as I said, it still promotes the purchasing of manga or media. And this really is important at this time because, as I said, although the Japanese weren't expecting all this these sales and that kind of stuff to North America and whatnot for these things, especially in the case of something like Orange Road, it was always like to me, it was always the back runner to Maison Nikkaku. Okay, so if even if you look at all the magazines and you look at where it was located, in the conjunction of where what was showing that year, Orange Road was always put back door to Maison Kaku. Maison Kaku was a bigger company. It had a lot more promo going for it. It had a lot more ads. It obviously had more episodes, so it was obviously a more popular show. Where Orange Road really kind of got buried behind there, and all this other stuff kind of was lost. I mean, it would probably be a lost series if it wasn't for the fact that I latched onto it, and I really got really endeared to the story, and basically I brought it forth and made it basically so that everyone else could see what kind of a gem of a story it was, and basically brought all these extra fans into the Orange Road fold, so much so that it was probably at one time more popular than Maison Kaku, at least over here. Now, of course, that didn't matter in Japan, because the fact that it was already several years over by the time we got the translation done, and enough people over here were interested in that series, which made it kind of difficult, because things like the posters and that kind of stuff were really difficult, and all the little trinkets and that kind of stuff would have been really, really difficult to get at that time. But the one thing that's still very, very available and still very orderable would be things like the Laserdiscs, the CDs, and of course the manga. And I guess they were taken a little bit by surprise by why they all of a sudden had to reprint a whole bunch of the CDs, and have to the sales for the Laserdiscs were rather unusually high, and higher, I suppose, and why they still continue selling lots and lots of manga. So in many ways, we took an underdog up above underdog status, and actually made it something that was quite unexpectedly popular, at least especially over here. And a lot of people will tell you that Orange Road is one of those classical fan favorites, and if you were in this era, and you go check out this kind of anime, you'll see what kind of a gem this series is. And again, it's lost from a lot of people because of the fact that they followed the magazines and that kind of stuff, and the popular media promoted Maison Kaku way more than they promoted Orange Road. Now, a very useful section in this magazine is that I also put a consumer bulletin section, which basically gives us an opportunity to thank all the sponsors that helped Japanese animation grow in Vancouver. But also at the same time, I also put some different consumer warnings about things that are going on in Japanese animation. One of them was there's this comic book store called Talking Illustrations down on Granville Street. What they would do is they would take like a Japanese magazine like New Type or like Anime V, and how all those magazines usually all have like promo stuff, like a poster or little booklets and that kind of stuff inside. Well, what they'd do is they'd pull all that stuff out, and they'd sell that stuff separately, so that when you got a copy of New Type magazine, you'd be short the poster and the little booklets, because they sold them to somebody else. So you'd get a really incomplete thing. So I'd recommend that a lot of people not to go shop there for their books, and instead go to like Sophia's bookstore, which is the more authentic one. Other ones that was like I had a really bad experience with Wizard Computers. They really didn't sell me the right stuff, and then they had a really poor return policy in regards to getting the exchange to the right stuff, and got the right gen locks and that stuff for the system that made it work. But that's fine. That place doesn't exist anymore. It's all better. And another one really funny story was another Japanese video rental store called Fuji Video, which was on Hastings Street. And the owner there didn't like how people were making copies of his tapes, right? Because as I said earlier, with tape trading and that kind of stuff, that was really about the only way you could get Japanese animation, or even Japanese programming for that matter, around. It was a very common practice in order to share anime, you'd have to basically, make a copy, or you'd actually have to physically lend your cassette to somebody else. And and he didn't like that, so he literally, third degree question to everybody who actually came into the store that wasn't Japanese to what they were planning to do with the tape, and the things like that. Why would you rent Japanese tapes and that kind of stuff if you were like, for example, a white person going into their store and going, well, you're not Japanese, why would you want Japanese tapes for? And literally, just a really hostile environment to that, which is really, really poor. Like I said, and it didn't take long. His store went out of business, and then when I opened up my store, I had the totally opposite focus, where we knew that people were coming in because they like Japanese animation, but they really needed help with the translation, because here you are, you're in Vancouver, you're not in Japan. You're gonna have lots of people that don't speak Japanese, but they're interested in Japanese animation. So you have to know the market, and you have to bridge that gap. So just things like that I put in the magazine. Okay, so the next article is an article on Double Zeta Gundam, and sort of at this time, Double Zeta Gundam was sort of one of my first sort of real Japanese series that didn't have anything that that was sort of English related. Sure, like Macross, had Robotech, so I sort of had that to use to follow and sort of get a idea what the show is about. But Double Zeta Gundam was one of the very first I got. That was like a totally different concept of story. So any information that I got from like David or Asa or Sheldon, it was really important to me. So what I did is I to use my Apple II computer, and I basically compiled and made this sort of character sheet and sort of general idea of the world, kind of thing. Taking all the different information and putting it together, and I decided, okay, well, since I got this all compiled, why not like put it into the newsletter so that other people can have this sort of information. And this is very, very important, because one of the first things you want to do is you want to sort of at least know what all the characters there are and what they're doing and that kind of stuff. And I remember I got to so much detail that I had to when I was getting all these Double Zeta Gundam episodes from the Japanese grocery store, which stored all their video cassettes on top of all the freezers. Their episodes were all in like literally random order, so I had to really, really pay attention to the Japanese magazines and use the TV guides that are in them to basically find out what episodes are where, and what happened in each of the episodes. Like some of them, the opening was cut off, so I couldn't use the wait until the opening credits come up, and then look in the book to see if I could find that same episode title in the book, so I could figure out what episode number it was. Just things like that. Just labeling tapes was difficult, right? Because I'd have like a tape with maybe like 10 episodes of episodes of Double Zeta on it, but like I wouldn't know what the episodes were, so then I had to actually go through and number them and kind of figure out backwards what they were. So it's really kind of chaotic there. I really also like the opening theme song, so I managed to get some translations for the theme songs, and really like the violin that's in the opening theme song for Double Zeta Gundam. Silent Voice, Animation Eye, of course, was a really catchy tune that I really also like. So I tell you that in previous episodes, so that's fine. Also, I wrote an article about music. Now, again, at this time, I was sort of working part-time. Part-time at Radio Shack. And what I did is I took some Japanese music and put it onto like an audio cassette, like one of these, and then put it into the auto reverse deck that's in the on display, and basically so it would basically play this music over and over and over and over again, right? And so I put a tape full of various quote anime music, right? Some stuff out of like City Hunter, and some stuff from Warren Road and that kind of stuff. Not necessarily Japanese language stuff, but just like just sort of anime-ish kind of music, and put it on there, and see if anyone sort of recognizes or anyone finds it really catchy. I get the occasional person that comes in that sort of understands Japanese maybe, or listens to Japanese, and so it picks it out. So that's kind of cool. And of course, the last page, I left it for Daisuke. Daisuke, basically hand wrote in Japanese his little thing, and he even put his little, signature seal he actually stamped that down and actually put that there. Something I never actually really figured out what he actually wrote in this text. But I assume it's something. The fact that he got forced to do it. Okay, all right. I hope you found that very educational, and hopefully that gave you sort of a more clear idea of the times that we had. Again, in this era where internet wasn't accessible as the way that we know it, right? So if you wanted to know more information about Orange Road, there isn't a tool like Google to come and help you, or Wikipedia or something like that to basically answer your questions, or to find out even about such a series like Orange Road or whatnot. You really had to rely on these magazines, especially the fanzines, if you needed something translated or basically laid out for you by somebody else or whatnot. About this, and so that's why things like these magazines and these fanzines were very important, and that's why people make them, and people actually went out and searched them and purchased them or became part of a club in order to get this kind of information. Right. So again, if you haven't gone down below and click like and click subscribe, that'd be great. I'm right now getting ready a bunch of episodes, more about cons and that kind of stuff. And I'm also coming up with something special to celebrate the going over 1K, and just so if you're really good fan, big fans of the thing, I got some surprises for you guys, and I'm gonna reveal them in the next couple episodes. Okay, so until next time, see you again.